Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome to our unboxing and overview of The Hunters from GMT Games and Consim Press. Now this is a 2019 third printing edition that we're going to take a look at, and this game is a solitaire game that focuses on U-boat combat from 1939 to 1943. Let's jump in and take a look. Let's start out here. The first thing is probably worth knowing about the game here is that there is a companion game to this called The Hunted. So make sure you get the one you want. This is from 1939 to 1943, and there's a continuation game, a standalone game. You don't need the two, but one of the cool things about this is you can start a U-boat campaign here and then continue it on in The Hunted and play the rest of the war if you just survive that far. So make sure you get the right one you want. We'll look at that one at a different point in time. Let's start with this one here. We'll flip this over and take a look at some of the little conditions here with this. So we've got a little description on the back here. You can see that one of the U-boat mats and stuff, which is pretty cool. And taking a look at the complexity here, it says low to moderate. I've looked through the rule set and I've read most of the rules by now, and I think that's a fairly good description. If I were going to go on a 1 to 9 scale, I'd put it at a 3 in terms of complexity. There's a good amount of rules, but they're not particularly hard, as we'll see as we get in there. Now, the average playing time here, it says 2 to 3 hours, and I think what they're talking about there is actually for a full campaign. Because the way the game works is that you take charge of a U-boat, a single individual U-boat, and you run it on a sequence of missions that take from start in 1939 until the U-boat is sunk, or you make it until 1943, at which point this game ends, and you can continue that U-boat campaign in the expansion or the second version of the game. And I think that 2 to 3 hours, from what I can tell right so far, having read the rules and seen a little bit of gameplay, is that that's for your whole campaign. That a mission is actually pretty fast. It's about 10 to maybe 20 minutes to play through one mission. So you can actually play a whole U-boat campaign in about 3 hours, which is kind of cool. Now, it is designed for solitaire, so suitable for solitaire play says very high. I'll give it a 9 out of 9 on that because it's obviously designed for solitaire for a single player experience. There are some cooperative modes that you can do, or there's some competitive modes where you each play a campaign and try to outdo the other person. But for the most part, it's designed as a single solitaire experience. So let's open this up now and take a look at what we've got inside. It's a 2-inch box and not very heavy, to be totally honest here. There's no map, which is, we'll see as how this works out here. So not a tremendously heavy game, light footprint. And here's our rulebook. So the rulebook is a straight matte paper here, 28 pages. However, if we kind of glance through and take a look at some of the pages here, there's a good amount of text here on this, as we can see. There's quite a bit of information, but it's mostly procedural stuff. So as you kind of read through it, there's not a lot of kind of challenging mechanics as I was reading through it. It's more like, this is what you do, and then there's a sequence of instructions on how to resolve that particular situation, whether it's how to surface combat, how to fire torpedoes, how to determine escort detection, how to handle escorts in the game and stuff like that, how to move the U-boat through different missions and things too. So not tremendously challenging. And once we get to page 19 here, we get the optional rules. So I feel like although there is quite a bit of procedure and text to the rulebook, it's really fast moving through it. So it doesn't take long to get through it. Optional rules start on page 19. And we have some examples and stuff like that, some historical information. And then this is cool. We'll mention this as we go forward here. These are some of the bios, if you would, of famous U-boat commanders. And there's actually a new feature of this version of the game that's worth mentioning, as we'll see in a little bit here too. And there's some optional rules. And then you've got this log sheet, some designer notes, and a printout of the different counters that we'll be using in the game. And then the last page has an index for everything with a few more charts and stuff like that too. So although the rulebook is a substantial chunk of paper, it's not super challenging in terms of figuring out how to play. I think a 3 out of a 9 is a very fair evaluation of this. Now this came with the third printing bonus. This is third printing bonus material. I didn't expect this. This is just an explanation of these Commandant cards, which basically allow you to replay the careers, or try to replay or outperform some of these historical U-boat commanders that were in World War II. And we'll take a look at those cards right towards the end because they're at the bottom of this pile here now. So one of the cool things about the game here is these are the U-boat mats. and I'll show these a close-up of these as well. So these basically depict all the different features of the U-boats, and each one is double-sided. There are 4 of them, so there are 8 different types of U-boats you can command in the game. And again, you take charge of one of these. So in a campaign, you're only going to use one of these at a time. You may get your U-boat upgraded at some point, or switch to a new U-boat, or get reassigned to a new U-boat at some point in your career. But you're only going to be using one of these at a time. And each one is subtly different, which gets at that idea of the replayability of the game and the depth of the game. I think there's quite a bit of replayability, because I think there's 3 different U-boats or more actually that you can use right at the start of the game. And like this Type 9B, which I think shows up later. This is available April of 1940. But this Type 9A is available in September of 1939. It has 22 torpedoes, whereas if you're using one of the Type 7 torpedo boats here, Type 7A here, on the left side, it has 11 torpedoes. So that's going to dictate a lot of different gameplay situations. And the range of the U-boats, the distance they can travel on in one mission, if you would, or one patrol, is quite a bit different. So that's going to mean that certain U-boats can go to different areas. You might get reassigned to the Mediterranean. So lots of kind of different stuff surround this sequence of missions to make it feel like you're playing in a vibrant type of world rather than just this static stuff that you're just kind of going out and doing various missions in. So they do a good job of, I think, building up a lot around that. Now, here's a look at the counters. I'll show some close-ups of these as we talk about them. These are more status counters than they are actual counters. So again, there's not a map per se where you're going to have a lot of different counters and ships and stuff like that on the board. These counters basically are going to be used on the U-boat map and then on the mission map to kind of keep track of like how many torpedoes you have in the boat, how much ammo you've got, the status of different elements of the U-boat. Some of these are used in the torpedo firing sequence and the combat sequences, and just a lot of different things that are used in the terms of how to keep track of the various action that's going on in the game. And some of these are 2-sided that we can see here, the second side as well. So then we've got the Hunter's Patrol log sheet. So this is cool, nice tactile. You're basically going to write down when you went on patrol and targets, and then the tonnage involved here. And your victory conditions are determined by the tonnage you've sunk. However, you automatically lose the game. It's kind of cool. If you automatically lose your campaign if your U-boat is captured, because then it's assumed that they got the Enigma device you were using, and that would have serious consequences on the outcome of the war. And so the idea, at the very least, total failure is if you get your U-boat captured. But otherwise, your U-boat, your campaign success, even if you get sunk or you get captured as a commander, your victory point total, if you would be, is determined on how much tonnage you get, you sink over the course of your campaign, which is pretty cool. And there's a lot of those. I'm sure you can find them online to print out more. Lots of charts here. So next we'll take a look at some of these charts and things. Quite a few of them to take a poke around here at. One of the cool things I like about this is that when you have an encounter, so you're going to go to different patrol zones, and then something's either going to happen or it's not going to happen. And when it does, if you encounter, like, for example, a tanker or something like that, then you're going to roll 2 10-sided dice to generate a number from 1 to 100, and that's going to give you the specific name of the ship that you've encountered. So, if you encounter a tanker, it could be the Lincoln Ellsworth, or the oil field, or the Diala. And there's some for North America. There's some capital ships you could come into as well. And there are, I think there's 3 of these. Yeah, there's one more that's got the side on something else here too. So depending upon what type of ship you encounter and where you are, you could encounter a different specific ship, which kind of gives it it's kind of cool that they did this. It gives the game a feel of kind of reality. You're not just sinking a random small freighter. You're sinking a specific small freighter, the Stanholm, for example, or something like that. So these are 2-sided for the different types of ships. Here we have the U-boat damage and repair chart. I'll show a close-up on this too. So this is if you suffer or incur damage while you're on patrol. It a lot of different places that can fall, and then you can try to fix it. And if you try to fix it but fail, then it's inoperable, and that could either lead you to have to abort the mission, or you're going to kind of be able to repair to continue on, or you'll just be able to continue on without that feature going on. Then again, lots of charts. It's a very procedural game. A certain thing's going to happen, and you're going to work through a procedure as to what to do and make decisions along the way as those things go on. Here we have escort detection. So what happens after the U-boat has been detected by any escorts that might be present in this little kind of the combat scenario that undergoes within a mission. And then this is deck damage and attack damage chart if you're firing the deck guns and stuff. Here are more target charts that we've seen. We've seen an example of that already. This is for small freighters and large freighters. These are there as well. And then random events. So there's 1 to 12 random events depending upon things that can go wrong. It'd be cool if there were more than 12, but I get it. I mean, each one's got a pretty in-depth explanation. I suppose that's something you could, if you wanted to, create your own little mod for and expand on these random events. One of them I thought was funny here. It's man overboard. Huge wave hits your bridge and an officer is lost at sea who is on watch duty when the mishap occurs. Roll 1 die 6. 1, it's the Commandant. Game ends. That would suck to end the game that way. You're the Commandant, you get washed overboard randomly and your whole campaign ends. All right, here's the encounter chart. So basically you're going to go to a specific zone. You're going to work through a series of zones on a patrol, and you're going to roll a die to see what happens. And sometimes something happens, and sometimes nothing happens. It could be a convoy, it could be a capital ship, or it could just be completely empty and you don't find anything. And then from there, you determine your actions and what's going to happen, and you go to the combat sequence. Here's some more U-boat patrol assignments. And again, it depends on what time of the war. So I think the early years are easy, and the later years are relatively, get a little bit harder, get a little bit more challenging. So, and as the war goes on, like I think the Hunted, it's called the Twilight of the U-boats. You got a lot more opposition. I assume that's a harder game than this one. But I think in 1939, you kind of, to a certain degree, got pretty free reign as to what happens here. So that's your encounter chart. This is also where you get assigned on patrol. One of the cool things it looks like is that you can get, your U-boat can get assigned to different areas in the Atlantic or maybe down even in the Mediterranean. So where you get sent on patrol can have an impact on what kind of things you run into and where you go. Aircraft encounters as well. So lots of stuff going on. Now these things I think are new with this version of the game as well. These are kind of map displays that you're going to move your U-boat through that shows where in specific points on the patrol you are. So you're moving out following these red arrows depending upon where your patrol zone is. So British Isles is here, and then you're moving back along the blue arrows to get back into port eventually. And the way it used to work, this is I think optional. I don't think you have to use these. The way it used to work is, I'm pulling out one of the submats again, is that you would just kind of get assigned to a different patrol and then you're moving your U-boat through this different patrol. So I think what this is basically is it just gives it a better visual appeal for where you are and where the U-boat is situated in the world itself. And we have one for kind of the basic Mediterranean, and then the Atlantic, the North Atlantic, and then you've got one for longer range, I think, U-boats that can take you down here to Brazil or the Caribbean or North America. And each one of those is single-sided. And then here is the combat mat. The combat mat is basically after you've got an encounter, you're going to use this to resolve combat, places for various status markers, and then the target, and then firing your torpedoes. And so you use this mat, here's the whole sequence of play for it, to basically carry out what happens after you've had some kind of an encounter in a patrol zone. Which is pretty, and this, you could have 2 or 3 of these on a mission, or you might, if luck isn't with you, you might have none. And there could be escorts present, there might not be escorts, it could be different types of ships and everything. But this is where that combat gets resolved, which is fun. Then we have our dice here. So we've got, looks like 3 6-sided dice, two 10-sided dice, and then a 20-sided die. So again, quite a bit of procedural elements to the game. And so you're going to be working through charts and stuff like that to a great degree. Here is the new feature, this bonus material. These are the famous U-boat commander cards. So there are 8 of them. And this kind of mode of the game, which is almost lends itself to a new mode of the game, is basically you can relive this commander's patrols. So on the back side, I think it's got the different patrols that they went. You start in December of 1940 and you do these 8 patrols, and your goal is to win the same awards. Oh yeah, you as a commander, it's cool, you can win awards depending upon your performance and things like that. So this commander, Lehman Willenbrock, sunk 25 ships of a total of 179,000 tons. So your goal, if you want to try to play this guy's career, is to get something equivalent to what he did. And from my understanding is that this is really hard. Because these guys were pretty good. And they have different, one thing to say is they do have special abilities. So this guy, Lehman Willenbrock, is lucky. Starts the game with the Hals on the Breburg counter, which is a counter that helps the luck to remove bad events happening. So here we can see a few of these commander cards and what kind of U-boats they had and everything. And that brings us to the end. So all in all, I'm excited to try this. I think what I might do on the channel is to create kind of a campaign running on the side where maybe once a week, just do a quick episode that's got like a 15-20 minute just a mission for a submarine, and then see how for a U-boat, and then see how far we can get a U-boat through the war here. Could we make it to the hunted game? My guess is we're going to screw up and I'll get sunk early in the war for sure. But anyway, it might be something to try. So I'm excited to try it. I think, looks pretty fun to me. I mean, it's always hard to speculate until you actually dig in and play, but I like the potential for stories that the game has. I like the potential, the narrative that surrounds the different U-boats and the different options and the replayability. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. And God, I mean, U-boats are just such a fascinating element of World War II to kind of recreate in game format. So I'm excited to play, and thanks so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new, please consider subscribing, and we'll see you again for more episodes on the channel soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.